Hi, this is Arna from the Tars team. If this is your first time watching one of our videos, we help marketers increase their conversion rate by up to 50% by transforming their traditional landing pages into conversational landing pages that have chatbots on them. In this video series, we actually show you guys exactly how we build those chatbots by recording the entire creation process. And in this particular edition, we'll be taking a look at Geico's homeowners insurance landing page that I have open on my screen right now. As always, we like to do a quick assessment of the issues with the landing page to figure out what we need to address in our conversational landing page. My biggest issue with this landing page is just the amount of text on the page. In 2019, where attention spans are as low as they are, if you throw a text-heavy landing page at your prospects like Geico is over here, you are definitely going to cause a subsection of them to drop before they convert. People just don't have the attention spans to read too much text, and the amount of text on this page definitely crosses the line into verbose. So you definitely want to avoid this if you are insistent on using your using a traditional landing page. In our conversational landing page, we won't have that issue because, as you'll see in a couple of minutes, conversational landing pages inherently have less text on them just because of the way chat interfaces are structured. With that, we can actually move on to the actual lead generation process. It doesn't happen on the first screen. You have to give them your zip code, hit start a quote, and that opens up a longer lead generation form where you can give them your personal details and details about your house. Now, this form, as far as forms go, is pretty good. The elements on the form look good for form elements. The form is responsive, and they've done a good job of creating a good UI around the form. The only issue is that at the end of the day, regardless of how many of these optimizations you make, it's still a form at the end of the day, and no one likes filling out forms. I've worked in CRO for a couple of years now, and I found that forms are just an inconvenience, a necessary inconvenience that prospects have to get through to get the final product that they want on the other end. In our conversational landing page, we will address this by, well, using a conversational landing page. Conversational landing pages accept the same lead information through a chat interface. So there's an actual back and forth interaction between your company and the prospect, as opposed to an impersonal form like this one. With that, I'm going to switch into the actual builder and we can start creating the page. In this case, if you've ever run a insurance lead generation campaign before, you'll know that these forms can be extremely long. And when forms are extremely long like this, I like to go through them, create a Google Doc that incorporates all of the information that I need to capture in my conversational landing page as a guide, as a sort of reference while I'm creating my bot. So that's what I have over here. I will keep switching back to this while I make my conversational landing page. The first thing that we like to do when we're building a conversational landing page like this one is to create the hook. A hook is a series of 3 messages that serve essentially the same purpose as the first fold of your traditional landing page. If you look at a traditional landing page, there are a few key elements that I'd like to draw your attention to right now. First of all, the logo at the top. There's always a little bit of branding in the first fold of a traditional landing page, and that's with good reason. We take it for granted, but these sorts of branding elements like a logo add, first of all, legitimacy to your page, because if you landed on this page and there was no logo over here, it would look extremely generic. And when it looks extremely generic, the page starts to look a little bit spammy. And when it looks spammy, people drop. The second element that we think is super important from these first folds is the main heading. This is a distillation of the value proposition that the company is offering. Over here, they're offering homeowners insurance to protect the prospect's investment. And it's a good way to capture user attention, to tell them that you are offering them what they are looking for to keep them on the page. If they come to the page and they can't figure out what you're offering them, whether you're offering what they are looking for, they might drop, and you want to avoid that. So that's why we pay close attention to the heading. The final element of the first fold, as always, this is probably the case in every single landing page, is the call to action. Over here, they ask for your zip code and ask you to click this start quote button. To start any lead generation process, there has to be a call to action, whether that's a form directly here or, in this case, a single form field and a button. In our hook, we like to incorporate similar elements in these first three messages. The first message is always the welcome message. So we're going to say welcome to Geico and throw in a logo as well. Again, it serves the exact same purpose as the logo in the traditional landing page. It adds legitimacy and it adds a little bit of branding that people can latch onto, which is especially useful if you're running retargeting campaigns, because it adds an identifiable brand element that people can recognize if they see your ads again on TV or on social media or in a display ad network. The second message that we like to incorporate is the value proposition message. So this transfers over from the heading of the page. What I usually like to do is copy and paste the heading and then edit it so that it seems more conversational. Because over here, this is quite impersonal. It's in a traditional landing page. We need to make it seem like someone would actually say this piece of text. So over here, I'm going to edit it so that it says, we help protect your investment through affordable homeowners insurance, through affordable homeowners insurance. So this now sounds a little more conversational. It doesn't sound like an impersonal heading on a page. It doesn't sound like static content. It sounds like something someone would actually tell you in a chat if they were trying to convey the same idea. A key point to note about this, and for all of these messages actually, is keep them short and sweet. As I mentioned before, if you add too much text on your page, people are going to drop. People don't like to read. They don't have the attention span for it. So I usually recommend keeping your messages, especially in the hook, to about tweet length. So below 140, I guess 280 now, but think about the old tweets, keep it below 140 characters per message. The final message that we want to incorporate in the hook is the ask message. So over here, we are going to give them an uncontroversial ask. We like to make the ask as uncontroversial as possible. And by this, we mean we don't ask for personal information. Over here, they ask for the zip code. We're not even going to do that. We're just going to ask them if they want to start the quote. So I'm going to say something like, if you have a few minutes, we can get you a free quote. And the reason we like to make it as uncontroversial as possible, where we don't ask for any information, is because we found that prospects are a little apprehensive to share any personal information as soon as they land on your page, and they like the bot to break the ice first. They like the conversation to begin before they start sharing information. So when you ask them an uncontroversial ask like this one, that allows them to do that. They don't have to share any information over here. We can give them a button that says, get a free quote, and throw in an icon just to add a little bit of a visual cue to the button. And with that, they can essentially start the entire conversation. They can start the lead generation process without sharing any actual information with you. And that makes it easier for them to start the conversation, reduces the amount of friction. As an added benefit, it also allows you to use a button input over here. And when you think about it, if you ask for something like zip code, right? So if you say, what is your zip code? Your zip code, a little bit of a typo there, but I'm going to ignore that. It would take a couple of taps to respond with that. You'd have to type out your zip code. In my case, it would be 900. That's 3 taps, 41, 5 taps, and then 1 tap to send the message, versus just 1 tap where you just tap the get a free quote button and the conversation is started with a single tap. With that, we've completed our hook. Remember, add a logo on your welcome message, keep your value proposition message as short as possible, keep all of them as short as possible, make your ask as uncontroversial as possible, and use a button input. We can move on to the lead generation flow now. Now, when you are capturing a lead through a conversation, you need to pay attention to the way you order your questions and the way you ask for information. So over here, for example, the prospect just gave us a user input. They said, get a free quote. If we went into this next gambit and we asked them for a piece of information right at the beginning, so what's the first piece of information over here? I think it was name. So if we ask them for their name immediately after they tap that button, it comes across as a little abrupt and maybe even a little rude. We haven't acknowledged their input. We haven't made this feel like an actual conversation. It almost feels like there's a very clinical robot behind the scenes that's just focused on getting their information, and that comes across again as being a little rude, and you want to avoid that. So before we continue with asking these questions, what we want to do is we want to acknowledge their input. So over here I'm going to say something like, great, I need a few details to get you set up. First, what is your name? So this sounds a lot more human. It acknowledges their input, so it's a lot less rude. And generally, it feels a lot more personal. It feels a lot more like they're actually having a conversation with someone. And on the topic of having a conversation and making your bots feel like they're as human as possible, providing the best customer support experience as possible, think about the way you're ordering your questions. Over here, I ask for name first, even though in the actual form, they don't ask for name first. And the reason for that is because if I was in the bot's place as a human being, I would ask for the other person's name first. And the reason I do that is because I like to know who I'm speaking with when I'm speaking to a stranger. It adds a little bit of a human element to it, and you really want to think about these sorts of things when you're constructing your own flow. I always recommend that you add your name first, but if that's not the sort of thing you would do when you're talking to someone, don't incorporate that. Just try to make the bot sound like you, and that's probably going to be a good way to make your bot sound as human as possible. With that, we can add full name verification on and continue with the lead generation process. In the next gambit, we want to acknowledge their input again, but in this case, they just provided us with their name. So now we want to acknowledge that in a way that feels as human as possible. So in this case, if someone just told me their name, I'd say something like, nice to meet you, and then pull their name from wherever they submitted it. This way, the conversation again feels more human, and it's incorporating some of the data they've already given us. So it makes the bot look a lot more intelligent, feel a lot more human, and it just adds to this general ethos of this bot actually being a representative of your company. Once we've acknowledged their input, we can ask for the next detail. In this case, I believe it is the address. Whenever I use a doc like this, I like to cancel out whatever I've asked for already. So we can say, what is the address of your house? House address. And we can use a special type of input, the geolocation, and we can put auto suggest. So it pulls addresses from Google Maps and can give people suggestions through a drop-down menu, making it easier for them to submit that. Hit save. We're going to breeze through the next couple of these lead generation questions really quick. I believe the next one was date of birth. And actually, I might actually move date of birth ahead of address. So address and coverage start date sort of go together because they have to do with the actual house that is being purchased. I'm actually also going to move the Geico auto insurance policy question before so that we can clump all of the questions about the house together. Because as you can see, we ask about the house down here as well. So I want to keep those questions together. We also ask for email over here. I'm actually going to move that as well to the end, and we'll actually get to this in a minute. I'll show you what I'm going to do with the email. I'm just going to keep it here for now. So first, we're going to ask them for their date of birth. Then we're going to ask them whether they have an insurance policy, and then their address. So I'm actually going to move this around. We can change this to, what is your date of birth? What is your date of birth? Make that a question mark instead of an exclamation mark. I do not know why I made it an exclamation mark. And we can give them a date scroller, allowing them only past dates, because obviously they can't have a birthday in the future. Hit save. We also want to change the name because we're no longer asking for house address. We're asking for DOB, their date of birth. And now we can ask them whether they are a Geico auto insurance provider or a customer. Auto. Again, if in case you missed it or it was a little confusing before, the reason I'm switching these around is because I want to clump together all of the questions about the house together. So the coverage start date and the address and are you in the process of purchasing your home, along with these property details, can all go in a row for more coherence. And we ask for all the basic details right at the beginning, the low stake questions. So over here, great, or thanks, acknowledge their input. Are you an existing Geico, or are you a Geico auto insurance customer? It's a simple yes/no question. We can give them buttons to respond because it's easier to tap a button than type out yes or no. And we can hit save. If they say yes over here, we want to branch them in a different direction and we want to ask them what their Geico auto number is. I believe that's what happens when you say yes over here. Where is it? Do you have a Geico auto policy? Yes. What's your Geico auto policy number? So we're going to incorporate that in our flow as well. Auto policy number. And we can say, great. What is your auto policy number? Your auto policy number. In case they don't know what it is at the time, we want them to be able to continue with the rest of the flow. So we're going to make this optional. And yeah, we're going to leave it at that. Hit save. And once they've submitted that, we can move on to the next question. So we're going to connect it if they say no. And once they've given us their number, if they say yes over here. And we can move on to the next question. Cross those out. And now we can ask for their address. So now that we've moved on to asking them about their house, we can prime them for that. We can say something like, now I need to know a bit. I need a few details about your house. First, what is the street address? Let's rename this to address and put the geolocation input back on. Once we've asked them for their address, we can ask them for the next piece of information, which is their coverage start date. So noted, when do you hope for, or actually we just said that we're asking them for details about their house. So you know what? I'm going to move the coverage start date to before the address question. So let's move these over here and connect the coverage start date to the address. Because the coverage start date has to do with the auto insurance policy, but it doesn't really have to do with the actual house. So we don't want to say it after we say, now I need a few details about your house, and then ask them when they want the coverage to start. So I'm going to move that before. When do you hope for the coverage to start? Give them a date scroller and add only future dates, because of course they can't have the coverage start retroactively. Coverage start. Hit save. And now we ask them about the house. So we ask them their address and we ask them whether they are in the process of buying the house. I believe that was the next one. We can say, got it. Are you in the process of buying this house? It's a simple yes/no question. Buying house. So again, we're going to give them buttons, but over here we don't want to branch the conversation off in different directions. We're going to show them the exact same question next. So we're going to turn branching off and hit save. So we've asked them for their address, coverage start date, and whether they're in the process of buying it. Now we've actually reached the email question. And here's where I said things get a little bit tricky. We found that if you ask for contact details too early in the conversation, people are going to drop. They feel like you're being a little too salesy and they don't want to share it with you and they drop. In fact, one of our customers found this out the hard way. They actually ran an A/B test where they found that a lot of their visitors were dropping before converting into a lead because they asked for the email ID too early. So what we're actually going to do, the reason I kept this so high up is because I actually wanted to show you guys I wanted to make a point of showing you that we're moving this all the way to the end of the flow. We're going to tack the contact information on right at the end as something that's totally incidental to the entire process. So we can say something at the end like, okay, we have all the details that we need. We're preparing your quote. Give us your email and we'll send it to you. With that, we can move on to the next question where we start asking them about the property details. So we can say, how old is the house? As you can see, poking out here is some of the pre-made stuff that I did. Since this form is so long, I actually went ahead and made a lot of this before so that you guys can go ahead and start building your own bots after watching this video, and so that this video doesn't last an hour long because you guys probably have better stuff to do. So what we're going to do is ask them how old the house is. So how old is the house? Give them a number input over here. Instead of a complete keyboard, they just need to type out a number in terms of years. We can add in brackets in years over here. And call this house age. I haven't added an acknowledgement over here, but you don't need to have an acknowledgement every single time. If you drop it a couple of times, it still feels human because I find that when I'm talking to someone, sometimes I will ask questions successively. House age. Or actually they say what year was the house built in. That's probably a better way to phrase it. So we can say house age. In what year was the house built? Close it, add number keyboard, and hit save. Now we need to know how many people were living in the house, the purchase date, the square footage, and the construction type. So let's do that. Let's add that really quick. Let's move all my pre-made ones a little lower so that we have some space to work around with. We're going to make this flow a little serpentine so it snakes across. Don't do this if you're actually building your own conversational landing page. Try to keep your structure over here as coherent as possible. Don't do this serpentine sort of formation that I have with my gambits. It looks cool, but it makes it harder to figure out what's going on when you have to come back and edit at a later time. So now we're going to ask them the number of people living in the house. Number of people. Thanks. How many people? How many people will be living or live in the house? Make it as concise as possible. Turn it into a number keyboard. I'm really going to try to breeze through this because we're already getting on the longer side with this video. Next question that we have was purchase date, square footage. So purchase date. This is at least giving you guys a sense of what the process looks like. So switching back and forth between the doc and the builder, adding the questions in, making edits to the questions. I hope you guys are getting a sense of what it's actually like to build one of these things and see that, you know, it doesn't actually take that long. It doesn't take that long to build one of these. When did you buy the house? add a date scroller, or what is the purchase date of the house? What is the purchase date of the house? Hit save. And now we need to ask them, I believe, the square footage. So let's do that real quick. How many square feet is the house? How many square feet is the house? Or how big is the house in square feet? That's a better way to phrase it. How big is the house in square feet? So I'm actually reading out all of these messages as I type them out, and that's not just because I'm shooting this video for you guys. Even if I wasn't shooting this video, I would still probably be doing this. And the reason I do this is because it's a great way to assess how your messages come across to the user. If you actually read out the question that you've typed out, you get a sense of how it sounds. Sometimes I've found that people, often when they're writing something, can get a little bit verbose, and they can get a little bit in their own heads, and they phrase things in super confusing ways, versus when they're actually talking, where they say things in a more simple and easily understandable way. So a good strategy to use when you're building these conversational flows is to read out the questions and read out the messaging flow as you're typing them out, because that gives you a sense of how it's going to sound to the user on the other end. I believe the next question we had was about the construction and structure type. So this is actually the last question we have before I've already built out the rest of the flow. So construction type. We're going to ask them construction/structure type. So we're going to say, got it, or sometimes this builder struggles when I'm recording a video, especially on Soapbox. I don't know if you guys have ever used this, but construction type. Great. What is the construction? What material? Or how is it phrased over here? What is the construction? What is the structure type of this? What type of structure is this house? See, this is why reading it out makes sense. What is the structure type of this house? It sounds kind of robotic. It sounds like someone's just reading it off a form and asking you, but what is the type of structure? Sounds better, at least in my opinion. What type of structure does your house have? Does your house have? This sounds way more human than what is the structure type of your house, which sounds super technical and can get super intimidating. We're again going to give them buttons over here because it's just easier to tap a button than it is to type out all of those options. So frame, masonry, veneer, and log. Frame, masonry, veneer. You actually don't have to read out these input options because they're probably fixed, they're probably defined. I just like doing that because sometimes I find it a little bit difficult to type and talk about something else at the same time. I'd like to just say what I'm typing out loud. Asbestos, wow, okay, that is super carcinogenic. So asbestos, EFIS, and super fire resistive. So let's call this asbestos, EFIS, and the last one was super fire resistant. Construction type. Let's just add an unsure in case they don't know. We want them to be able to continue with the conversation. So let's say unsure over there. Whoa, there are a lot of sockets down here. We're going to show them the exact same question next, regardless of what they respond with. So let's turn branching off so that it turns into just one friendly socket over there. All right. Now I think we just need to ask them for the number of floors, and then the rest of it I have created already. So let's add that question in. And ask them for the number of floors. Thanks. How many floors does the house have? Floors. And we can make it a number keyboard again. Or actually, a more human way to phrase that is how many stories? I don't know if everyone would understand stories, so let's say. Let's just keep it as how many floors does your house have? They'll get the idea. And I've actually built the rest of the conversational flow, so I'm just going to link this up over here and close out the flow at the other end to show you what I meant with the email stuff. So let's throw in a gambit all the way at the end, cross out everything in our Google Doc. So we have all of these property details all the way till the end. As you can see, there were a lot of details, and if I incorporated all of them into this video, it would be an extremely long video, and neither you nor I have the time for that. So we're just going to skip all the way to the end and ask for the email. But you guys get the idea of how you could implement these. All you have to do is acknowledge the user input as often as possible, keep your messages short, keep them concise, and make them sound as human as possible, and just keep connecting the gambits together. And you can get a complete lead generation flow just like this one. Now we need to ask for their email. Now, what I was mentioning earlier about the email is essentially we can tack the email on right at the end of the conversation as if it's incidental to the whole thing. So people don't like sharing their email with you because it comes across as salesy. But now that we've asked them all of these details about their house, they feel invested in the conversation and they want their free quote by the end of it. So we're going to say something like, okay, we have all the information that we need. Give us your email and we'll send you a quote when it's ready. So awesome. We have all the details that we need. Share your email ID below and we'll send you your free quote. Turn email verification on. And with that, we have completed our entire lead generation flow. All we need to do is end the conversation in a polite way. You don't want to be rude because they still haven't bought the insurance yet. In fact, you just don't want to be rude in general. I mean, even if they weren't buying the insurance, why would you want to be mean to them? So we can end the conversation over here. Say, thanks. Keep, thanks. Keep a lookout for our email. Keep a lookout for our email. Someone from our team will be in touch. Or thanks, someone from our team will be in touch. Keep a lookout for their email with your quote. Have a nice day. A great day. Select auto page redirection, hit save, deploy our bot, and it is completely ready on the other end. The only change that we really need to make to this bot now is to make it look the part. Right now, we have an engaging conversational flow that incorporates a lot of these best practices that I've been talking about, like acknowledging user input, making it seem as human as possible. But as you can see, this bot looks kind of generic. It looks like iMessage or Messenger. It doesn't really look like a Geico lead generation experience. So what we want to try to do is incorporate some of those brand colors in, just so that it doesn't look so generic. As I mentioned before, generic looking pages without branding don't look particularly legitimate. They look kind of spammy. And also when you have branding, it creates an identifiable visual theme that people can identify later on if you're running retargeting campaigns, or if you're running ad campaigns on TV like Geico does all the time. So let's switch to the design section, and we can start making changes to their colors. First, I want to actually go back to their website and check what their brand colors are. I really like this blue that they have in the background. So I'm going to use that as the message bubble colors in this case. I have this handy little color picker tool over here that gives me the hexadecimal code. You can get this on the Chrome Web Store. Now that I've copied the code, I'm going to jump back into the builder, change the bot message bubble colors first to that color blue, change the user message bubble colors as well to blue, hit save before we continue. And actually, I'm also going to change the page background to a solid white. And the reason I like to do this is because it makes it feel like the chat area is just an extension of the rest of the page. We're going to hit save over here so that this entire, all the changes we just made have been saved. Another change I really want to make it seem less generic is to change the URL. If I actually go to the page over here, you'll see that it says chatbot.hellotars.com, nothing about Geico. We are going to add Geico over here in the URL so that it's geico.hellotars.com. Hit save, deploy the bot, and reopen it in the new tab. Let's leave the site. And you'll see after this page reloads in a couple of seconds that we have a brand new conversational landing page that looks the part. It has an engaging conversational flow that captures leads in a way that's way more personal and way more human than a traditional form. I also like the way the message bubble color merges with the icon color over here. So it looks like it's a seamless, it looks like the icon is just a part of the message bubble. The conversational flow is, again, more engaging than the form. You aren't filling out a boring form. You're actually having a conversation with someone from the company. So in this case, Geico. Even if it is just a virtual agent, a chatbot, not an actual human being, you still get the perception that you're having a conversation with someone from the company. Someone's taking out their time to speak with you. And the end result, again, since I mentioned it only at the beginning of this video and you guys already probably forgot, the end result of this change is an increase in conversion rate by up to 50%. So if you replace your traditional lead generation experience, which is a pretty boring looking form, with a conversational landing page like this one, which is more engaging, it's a back and forth interaction, you will start to see more leads coming in for the same amount of effort that you're putting into your ad campaigns, and the same amount of money, more importantly, that you're putting into your ad campaigns. For some reason, I'm getting this coverage in 4 years. But that's about it. You guys are pretty much ready to build your own conversational landing page, just like I did, incorporate all of the same best practices that I did. The main thing that you guys should remember when you're building these is just think about how you would phrase the questions, how you would phrase the messages if you were manually collecting these leads over chat, and use that as a template. Everything that I said has been done based on what I would do if I was in the bot's place, but you might do things differently yourself. So incorporate whatever you think is best and whatever you think seems most human. That's really just the key to creating a good conversational landing page. If you have any questions or any feedback, feel free to let us know. If you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments. If you're on our website and watching this, we have a chatbot in the bottom right corner of our screen that you can use to give us feedback. If you use the TARS Builder, if you've already signed up, we have an intercom widget in the bottom right of our screen for customer support. So you can message us and ask us if you have any questions about how you can build your own conversational landing page.